Frozen in this moment, the last, and I know it. Think about the winners with hands with the coldest. Think about handout, shit, it's still growing. Think about the world, how we didn't even notice.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's podcast. Hope everybody's doing well. It's another Thursday night, which means we're live again, and we're going to hopefully get some questions. We're going to figure some out, and you know what? A tick man like myself might even learn a few things. So welcome. Hello, everybody. We're going to be joined by Mr. Patrick Murphy. He is the CEO. Get this, he's the most important person. There's only four of them. He's the CEO of Irish Phil. What is he? CEO of Irish Southwest and Fisheries, right? So that means there's only four of them in the country. So they look after all the sort of whole country inside and out, looking after all the fishing and stuff like that, getting the stuff that you need to know about fishing in the country right. Okay, he helps make the laws, he helps make all that type of stuff. And you know what? He's a good friend of mine too. So anytime we get any problems with fishing, we like to get him on. Cranky Murphy, as his friends call him, his dear friends. And I don't know whether I get to call him that yet or not, but we're working on it. But if I press this button now, hopefully we will get him on live. And of course, with internet and broadband in West Cork and in West Ireland, it's never very good. So this could all go tits up, but hopefully now we can do it. If I press this button... Mr. Murphy, how are you?
Good evening, Terence. How are you? I like the intro.
I don't know whether I get to be the friend anymore, whether I get to be...
Oh, no worries.
Do I get that, or do I get that privilege?
You do, of course. Absolutely. Go back to our disco DJing times and keeping the children of West Cork happy. Yeah, good days. Sure.
Look, we had to do something. We were raising funds for the community in Ballyhop, wasn't that?
That's right. Keeping them off the streets and, passing on our wisdom and everything else and giving him an outing. There's no harm to him, yeah. They all turned out okay. Yeah.
So what's the crack? How's life been? Are you still working away, fighting the cause, keeping the victory flag flying?
Yeah. We're coming into Brexit now, and we have real concerns for our industry. And Michel Barnier is after putting a call out to the other 8 ministers from the countries that are coastal regions that have a real interest in our waters and UK waters. And we're petrified now that there'll be a deal done and we'll be thrown to the wolves as a country. We've the richest, most diverse waters in Europe here, even trumping the UK definitely by square mile. It's where the fish come to spawn, it's where the fish come to breed, it's where the fish come to develop into juveniles and move on into other shorelines and everything else. So, we've seen boats coming from all over Europe for over a century now. I was telling people there about O'Sullivan Bear and Castledown Bear, how he made his wealth as a chieftain or a king in the local region, was charging the visiting boats a fee to come in and use the port facilities, salt their fish and take them home with them, And that hasn't changed much, but we don't get the fees anymore. That's the problem, unfortunately. They
just come sure no O'Sullivan down there in Castledown Bear haven't thought of that idea? Put a floating platoon.
Yeah, you'll be arrested. You'll be arrested now. That's the problem, you see. Yeah,
what's going to happen with Brexit? Right, let's get this straight. We always had a problem with being an Irish person, being a fisherman's son. You kind of always had a problem looking at all these boats coming into the Irish waters, and under, I suppose, European law and being part of the EU law, we sort of opened our doors and our waters, we should say, to everybody else in Europe. And that was just one of the things that allowed fisheries in our waters, basically. So does that, if Brexit happens, it is happening with no deal or a deal, if we see English boats, are we allowed to shoot them, or how does that work? To keep them out of our own waters, or what's going to happen?
So just a quick history lesson. Look, we joined in the Treaty of Accession in 1973. We joined with the UK and we joined with Denmark at the same time. But we joined more or less as a team. So what we brought to the party was our fishing waters, both the UK and Ireland. And prior to that, the way that you controlled your waters was by cannon shot, would you believe it? And 12 miles off your shoreline is where they reckon the cannonball would land. So that was your control,
See, of course, guys, this is the problem.
It was the first ones to extend their jurisdiction.
We're losing you. Hang on a second.
Maybe the history lesson too boring? So Iceland were the first to extend their waters to 200 miles. And you might have heard about the Cod Wars. This is where the English Navy and the Icelandic Navy squared up to each other. we could be looking at that repeating again. So the difference now between then and back and now is this: is that the UK are leaving; they'll become a coastal state. They are claiming full sovereignty over their waters, and they're saying that everything's inside here is ours because it's our zone. So zonal attachment. And by that, then they're saying, well, we have X amount of fish being caught in our waters. We want more. Simple as that. We just want more, and we want you all to leave, and we'll do a deal with you to come back in. So here's where it gets complicated now for us. We cannot go to the UK as an individual country and say, right, 10 of your boats want to come into Irish waters, so that means 10 of ours get to fish in your waters.
Okay.
10 of your boats want to catch 100 ton of hake. Ergo, we get 100 ton back in your waters. That's not the way it works. Under relative stability, we all get a certain share of the fish, which was designed, would you believe it? You can do the maths now, Terence, right?
Oh, Jesus, this is going to be tricky.
In 1984, that's when the deal was done. That's when we signed off on it. So we had recorded our fish landings over a period of 5 years. Yep. And at that stage, then they totted it all up and they said, right, this is what you have, this is what you have, this is what you have, and that's what you're going to keep. So the only time you get an increase is if the stock itself recovers and everybody gets a lift. So that's a hard one to take, whereas we in our waters now, the French people and fishermen, they have 10 times the amount we're allowed to catch in monkfish. 10 times our amount. So you see, if the fish go up 10%, they get as much of a lift as we have in its entirety. So no, here's where the catch is, you see. When we go back, remember I was telling you about exactly. So when we're negotiating now, we don't negotiate. It's the European Union. If the common fishery policy stays as it is, right, then that 100 ton of whatever you say, hake, that our monk, 100 ton of monk, that the UK want to catch back in our waters when they leave. They want to come back in with their boat. They've traditionally fished here as well. And they'll say, look, we'll give you 100 ton of monk back in our area. But as I said, we don't get it. We'll get 1/10 of what the French will get. So the easiest way to describe this lunacy in my book, and I call this lunacy, like, right, would be the same as us as a country going to the Polish and saying, listen, we're all in the European Union. Can I have 1,000 ton of coal, please? You have the coal. We're all in the European Union. So give us 1,000 ton of coal. And the lad over, the Prime Minister, goes, do you know what? Okay, we're all in the European Union. We've plenty of coal. We'll give you 1,000 ton of coal. And then he hears a week later, the feckers, they went to England with 1,000 ton of coal and they swapped it for 1,000 ton of their coal. And we got nothing out of it. So they didn't want our coal at all. They just wanted to swap it with the UK.
Yes.
I don't agree with that. That's my own personal viewpoint, right? So the second whammy is that the boats that are currently fishing in the UK, which is numbering 400, right? And you might think, well, that's not a lot. Well, it is a lot because we have only 164 boats left. Our fleet has been reduced to that number.
Decimated.
That people want decimated from in the last 11 years, right? Since 2009, we had 280. I don't want to tell you how many we had before that, but we'll just say we go back that amount of time. 280 boats reduced to 165. That's all we have in our fleet. Over 18 meters. And now that's 59.5 foot is 18 meters. Do you know what I mean? Like that isn't the length of a house. Like that's not a big boat. Do you know? People might think that's a big boat because they look at it. But when you're talking about 150 meters, 200 meters is the size of, or up to 250 meters for the Danish pelagic boats. They'd swallow us. Do you know what I mean? Like it's uncalculable what's happening. But look, this is the era we're living in, and this is what we have to try and negotiate with. And it's not easy. So we had a meeting today with our minister and the department, BIM, Marine Institute, NGOs, Birdwatch Ireland, pillars, the Europe, environmental pillar, other organisations, and to decide on the advice that we were given from ICES. And ICES is a group of scientists that decide the health of the stocks. So we go through 100 different species of fish and we see what we should be able to catch in the calendar year so that the spawning cycle of that fish will replenish itself next year. It's like farming. It's in a forestry, you go out, the forestry grows in 5 years. So if you cut more than 20% of the forestry in any 1 year, you're not going to replace it. It's not going to be replaced in 5 years' time. So we manage the stocks that way. And as I said, each country gets to share the stocks. But if the UK decide to take more, that's going to, excuse the language, cock everything up, you know. So that's why we said, look, it's a bad deal we have at the moment, but at least if we got the same deal, we'd survive. And I mean by surviving, I mean the 165 boats or 4 boats that are there now, I don't think they will survive, to be honest with you. But because of the way the stocks are going and the complications of the multi-annual plans, the landing obligation, the regulations, and what are on vessels now, all this stuff is impacting on, and not just the earning power of our fishing boats, but the mental health of the people that are fishing outside there. So I'm just going to give you an element of that now, Terence, right? And you can butt in any time because I'll talk for Ireland because it's all in my head and I have to let it get out at some stage, right?
This is what we're doing. We're having the discussion.
So I don't know who's listening to this, but this is the truth. So, you know, I'm fact-checked. You can fact-check anything I say. I live and breathe this. I'm fishing since I was 8 years of age with my father, right? And around the islands of Hare Island. So I'm an inshore fisherman. So I'm 50. Yeah. So you can say that's definitely 30 years of experience on the water and clawing a living because we didn't get it handed to it. We had to earn it. This job is the first time in my life that my wife has seen security that we actually get a wage out of doing something. Like I did this job for free for 10 years. Like, and look, as I said, people can challenge me anything they want and call me any names they want. It's like water off a duck's back. If they can match what I've done, nah, I don't care, right? You know, so you know me. You know me from getting involved with kids and involved in my community. I'm mad about it. Look, we have to live together. Yeah. So back to one element, one example, right? We had, you might have heard about this, penalty points, right?
Yes.
And this is a new
bring up as well. Yeah. This is a new thing. Yeah.
So this law was brought in specifically for fishermen, right? And it was brought in from the European Union. And would you believe it? Before my time, the fishermen were actually looking for this. Because if they were criminalized, they couldn't go to the likes of America, you know?
Yes.
So, and you remember how many people in the last few decades, I hope people haven't forgot it, because I remember it, out of my classroom, only 8 of us, out of a classroom of 70 managed to stay around, and the previous year it was 7, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody else was flying off and going to America. So you can imagine somebody that said, I want to visit my son or my daughter who can't come home, and then they're told, well, you had 10 boxes of fish the other day, where after criminalizing you ain't going to the States ever, right? So the fisherman said, look, that's crazy. Can we find another way of, if you catch me doing something or if I'm doing something out the way, penalize me, but let the punishment fit the crime, right? So they asked for an administrative sanction, right? Mm-hmm. And but as usual, anything that the fishermen ask for, it's 2.20. It's never what they look for. It's always going to be worse. It is unbelievable what happens. Like, and trust me, I am not joking you.
How does this system work? It's not like the penalty point system with a driver's license, is it? Like if you get like 12 points, you're put off the road type of thing. Like, how does this system work to the average person now? Because like I would have a basic understanding of it, but like to our listeners at home, how does it actually work? The penalty system. How does that work going forward?
So what happens is that this is the system. Okay, we have the SFPA, Sea Fishery Protection Agency. They would be like the guards, right, for the fishing industry. You also have the Navy, right? They're another enforcement agency. So what happens is that the SFPA have full monitoring of your vessel. So in other words, you have a tracking system, right, on your vessel that tells them where you are at all times, right? Yeah. And it sends out a signal every 2 hours, but they can increase that thing. On top of that, then you also have to call in. So you have an electronic logbook on board your vessel. Yeah. So you have to record everything that you're doing and where you are and the area you're working in, the amount of fish, the different type of species of fish. And you not only have to do that, you have to store those fish separately below in the hold of your boat so that you have to go down and if somebody wants to inspect them. Now, there's technical difficulties with that, as you know, Terence, stacking boxes up. If you put 10 high and 2 alongside it, the boat rolls, 8 boxes spill over. So it's very difficult for that. You have to pound off the fish. You've hygiene issues and everything else, storage in a boat. Look, it's a myriad. It's hard enough to do this, but these are the things they comply with. Yeah. So then on top of that, every evening, right, before you go to bed, by midnight, you are duty bound to fill in your electronic logbook what fish you caught for the day and add it to the fish you caught for the previous day. And you're allowed 10% of a margin of error. You go outside that, you're illegal. You're caught. No. There's, as I said to you, so a recent system that has been introduced. This is how crazy now things are, right? So boats were getting notified from the Harboland, right? And they were saying, there's an error with your logbook. There's an error. There's an error. There's an error. If there's an error in your logbook and it's deemed an infringement, you will get penalty points for this, right?
Okay.
So here's where the error occurred. They decided to say that a boat couldn't put in his departure hours and time that he was departing any more than 4 hours of when he was to leave. So if he was leaving at 10 o'clock at night, he couldn't put in before 6 o'clock that he was leaving, right?
Okay.
So if he did, and he left at 10 o'clock, then he got notified. There was an error. If he's outside fishing and he's inside one of the ISIS areas where he's fishing, and the boat sends out a signal, right? But by the time it gets to the mainland, he could have moved 10 miles. There's an error. So he's put in a longitude and latitude. There's an error. No. You can square that away with it inside the judge, and you can explain, judge, listen, there's blowing a gale, there was thing. Our computer, would you believe it? We have boats now with this computerized system that they don't implement. They have the Wi-Fi and they pay for all this to send out these signals, right? But they have a system that they're locked out of, so they have no control over it bar putting in the data. Mm-hmm. If that system updates, you're locked out for 4 or 5 hours, right? So you don't send the signal. And you're criminalized for doing that, right? So there's penalty points. But you could explain that. But here's the thing with the penalty points, right? So you're deemed to have infringed on your logbook. And as the law says, this new law, there's an infringement there. They adjudicate you have an infringement there. They have a panel that will look to see, are the lads, after getting it right, have you infringed? I would say the same. Yeah, you've infringed. Do they take in the mitigating factors? Who knows?
Okay.
I know that if you go in front of a judge, because it's the burden of proof that you have to prove it definitely did it, that he definitely put in the wrong reading for some reason or whatever else, and the evidence shows that he's done that he's accrued some advantage by doing this, then the judge will say, yeah, look, you're doing something here now, kid. But if he's still inside in the area where he's fishing, which is maybe 50 miles square, and he's 10 miles out of position, it's still an infringement, but you're still inside in the same area. So, do you understand? So, here's where the penalty points come in. You come out of the courtroom and you say, the judge said I'm innocent. Tough shit. It doesn't apply to you. You're stuck with him, kid. And as you said, what happens then is that get a number of points on your license, right?
Yeah.
Here's the difference between driving in a car. I go down the road and I'm driving in my Bentley, right? And I get 6 penalty points. And I know I've just been done again, and I'm going to be off the road for 2 years or a year or whatever else. And you say, and I don't really need the Bentley, do I? You better get rid of that now until she's worth a few bob, right? Not with a boat. If you sell the Bentley, if you sell the boat, the points go with the boat. If you sell the license off the boat, and if you divide the license, so it's like taking the engine out of the Bentley, the fella gets the 6 points. You sell the door to another fella, he gets 6 points. You sell the mirror off the car, 6 points go with that. So
there's 18 points just gone from them three packs.
So, you couldn't make this up. You know, Walt Disney wouldn't touch this for one of his movies.
Surely there has to be like driving. It has to be the skippers, or like you can hardly turn around and blame, we'll say, the owner of the boat if the skipper is out. Like you have to turn around and say, all right, due care, diligence, and all that type of thing. But like you can hardly blame the owner of the boat for this happening. Goes out like
it's better than that, Terence. We don't do things by half here, kid. You have 2 systems, one for the skipper to get penalty points and another one for the owner. So it's a double. So any infringement, if the skipper, he'll have to get it. Now, I think that's why, you know, when you hear, we had to bring this in, this is down to European law. Well, we've been fined by the European Union and they've taken out a thing against us. But I don't think it's far us not having in the penalty points for the one that was challenged and beaten in the courts. I think it's the second one. Because we did nothing about that. We had to wait for the skippers. Yeah. No, that's my own. Listen, it's alleged, just to cover myself now legally here. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the letter that the minister and the government referred to in the Dáil debates.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
never seen this letter. It was never disclosed to us. But like, this is it. But this is only the tip of the iceberg, as I said. So you can imagine how a fisherman, okay, he goes to sea. He has to call in. He's to tell him what he's doing. Wherever he goes, he's being monitored.
Mm-hmm.
He has to record the fish. He can be boarded at any time, day or night, by the Navy, and they can go down and check his hold. They can do it numerous times. Before he's allowed to land one box of fish on the pier, he has to call ahead and he has to give 4 hours warning notice to the authorities in case they want to come down and inspect him. And then they come down and they can inspect him. The inspections don't end there. They can go into the factories afterwards and they can inspect it there. They can inspect it in the lorries. Like, for anybody to say that this fishery isn't being monitored, like, you know, unless you're going to put something up on top of your shoulder to be looking at everything you're doing, like, you know, we'd be better equipped than the guards, I'd say, with the old body cams. It's ridiculous. It really is, like, because here's the thing. Here's the funny side of this, right? If you go to any fisherman and your father was a fisherman and ask him, Dad, right? Would you like to clean the place out now in the next couple of years and make as much money as you can and make a fortune? He go, not at all. What if you wanted to be a fisherman? What if the next generation wanted to be a fisherman? It's not my right to take this out of the picture. We have this has to be there for everybody. You know, we have it's a shared resource. Now, the difference between a shared resource in this instance is that you can't have a shared resource for everybody. There has to be rules and regulations. There has to be control measures. Everybody knows that, because there's no angels in any job in any part of our society. We even see that in the courtrooms this week, where an audiologist, you know, has been brought in for not being able to check children's hearing. Like, you know, I've personal experience of the likes of that myself. I'm not going to go into it tonight, but look, these things happen, and you move on in life, and hopefully that the damage isn't irreparable and that you can't surmount it. But like, to say that criminals, the bad press that we get every day of the week, for a person that leaves the pier to risk their lives, and I mean risk their lives, and tragically we're seeing there recently all the anniversaries. We've heard of lads being lost there recently, and I've lost friends to the sea. And they're with me every day of the week. You know, we have boats with pictures of lads inside in the boats that were lost. You know, but you can't. It's like an astronaut. You know the risks, but you're not going to let them get inside your head. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. You know, like.
They're having to go out due to quotas and stuff like that. They're having to go out in worse and worse weather all the time. And like, as my father would say, fishing back in the day, he wouldn't go fishing in December. You wouldn't dream of it. Maybe to January, wouldn't dream of it. Now lads are going 365, you know, in all types of weather, just to match the boat.
Yeah, and it's 250 miles off, out to the Porcupine Bank, with rolling seas, 30 or 40 meters high, you know, trying to make a living. And the reason for that, Terence, is that the system we operate, right? I give out the fish, and I don't say I, there's a few more of us involved in it, but we work with the department every month to advise the minister on what quotas, not what they can catch, but what we can do to stretch out the little resource we have throughout the year to give the boats a chance to make a living, right? So they get a little bit of everything, right? And we give that out on a monthly basis. If a boat doesn't catch it, what's not caught in that calendar month is rolled into the next month. So if a boat doesn't get out, that's it. He earned nothing for that month, and he can never earn anything for that month. It's lost to him. It's gone. So of course, if they want to stay going, and they've crews and families and people dependent on them, and our shoreline people depending on them, like you know, and it's there. It's in their blood. They have to go out, and to make it worse for them, for the only time that they might get a bit of respite, like. You know, we're coming on now to the 6 mile exclusion zone, right? The 6 mile exclusion zone isn't just the bays of Ireland. It's a 6 mile exclusion zone outside every one of our islands. So you stand in the most outerly point of our country and look 6 miles out to sea. Beyond that, that's where they go. There is no shelter out there, right? You see down around the East Coast, and you go inside the headlands in certain types of weathers. You might be 4 or 5 miles off the shoreline, and you still couldn't even see the boat. And they're illegal, you know, with that. So they're told, get out into the storms and the wilds. And look, any fisherman will tell you that's trawling and stuff like that. They're like anchors in the boat. So you put them out, it steadies down the ship. Fishing, is better if you can fish. Now, there's no point in throwing out the nets in bad ground. There's no point in throwing out the nets if the boat is jumping up and down too much, because it'll lift the net off the bottom and the fish go in underneath it. So, and it's an expensive racket. Like you're burning a lot of diesel to do this,
Yeah. But just get back to a couple of points you made there. The fact that the Irish fishermen have to call in 4 hours early and call in 4 hours before they depart and stuff like that. How does the likes of, we'll say, the Spanish and the French, do they have to ring in 4 hours ahead, or can they just come in willy-nilly and just say, right, boys, we're here, time to pick up?
You've got me there. I don't know. I do know that they I knew though. You actually have me there. I'll find that out. No, actually, it's 6 years in the job, and finally some fella caught me with a question. I don't know, Terence, is the short answer for that. I do know under the COVID thing, that there was certain perimeters set up for them, and they did have to hail in if there was sick crewmen on board, and whether they got to the mooring and there was an isolated place where they'd land and stuff like that, because the communities were concerned, when we were told you could only look in the window at somebody, you couldn't actually put your finger on them or touch them, like, even though they said the same for Christmas, you can't hug them. Imagine not meeting your mother or your thing for 6 months. Don't touch me! Jesus Christ. Anyway, no, I'm back to your point. I don't want to be going away off task now, even though you've caught me. The way we allocate the fish here is unique to Ireland, right? Because we've such a small resource. We try and stretch it out as much as we can during the year. And we do the best that we can for the boats, and weather changes things, and you might catch it, or there's all the different métiers of fishing, and some fellas might be able to go out and gill netting and stuff, and close to shore, there's other problems there, and skirt around them. But the Spanish, what they do is that if they come in and they land a full boatload of fish, they ring home. It's like E.T., ring home. And they're so, listen, how much fish have you? This is it. Can you send me the paperwork to match what fish I have in the hold? And the advantage that gives them, Terence, is that you can see it on the AIS. So if people look up AIS, a positioning chart for boats that sign up to it, you'll see all the boats off our coastline, and they all have AIS on. And you can see a lot of foreign boats. And, somebody asked me, they said, have we bad fishermen? And I said, what do you mean? He said, I was looking at that AIS crack, and there's no Irish boats there. And I says, yeah. He says, why is that then? Can they not catch the fish? I said, if you watch it for long enough, you'll see an Irish boat drift on into the chart for a little bit, right? He'll stay there for a while, and then he's gone again, right?
Yeah.
Because the fish that are there might be an awful lot of hake, right?
Yeah.
But we only have a certain amount of hake to catch in the month. So we stretch it out per week. The boats do if they go out for 3 or 4 trips, so they can only catch a certain amount each week. And if they catch too much hake, then they have to skedaddle and go and catch some haddock or whiting or a bit of monk or whatever. So they diversify. So our fellas are like bees buzzing around to all the different flowers to try and get enough honey and nectar, whereas the other fella, he's in the jar. He's just dipping in and he's filling up. Yeah. So that's the difference. Yeah,
it is annoying. To be fair, like we are the stop to the Atlantic, and like even like there's a certain part of me that sort of goes, right, why isn't our government officials going, this is the Atlantic, we're the start of it, this is ours, now clear off, boys, or else pay us the difference. Like it does annoy me so much, especially when you see I know they're all acting within the law, but when you see acting within the law, we'll use that loosely, yeah. When you see all the foreign boats in, it's all it sort of sticks in my craw a small bit. Like when you see all the foreign boats in the waters, and I know how they can fish. I know that they can fish well above what the quotas that we have as Irish fishermen. And they have their own quotas. Now, like I said, they're acting when there's nothing we can do. We can't stop them. So they're doing no different than what an Irish person would be if he could fish down off Spain. So they're doing it. There's nothing we can do about it. But there's still something that sits in my craw. Like, you've got to have our government officials turn around, go back to the European Union and go, come here, lads, we need waters for Ireland. Like, because this is a try. Like, if you get rid of fishing, you can say goodbye to Castledownbere, you can say goodbye to Killypnegs, you can say goodbye to most of the Western.
Union Hall, Baltimore will be finished, Schull will be completely gone. Dunmore East, look, Ballycotton, all those places, Kilmore Key, all around the country. And like I'm not naming a lot, but I'd like to touch on what you've raised here now, because it's really, really important that people understand this. And we've put this out there, right? And this is really true and really important for us as a nation. We cannot allow, and I mean this, and I'm saying this, so I'm hoping politicians are listening to this, we cannot allow vessels to be allowed to pour in if they're kicked out of UK waters and come into our waters. It just can't happen, regardless of their fishing rights, because if they do that, they will definitely damage our biologically sensitive area where the fish come to spawn. And an easy way that I describe this for everybody to understand it, it's football, it's GAA. And everybody knows the club in Bantry. When they go over there on a Sunday, they'll bring the youngsters in for the first game. After a while, the next age group goes there and the next ones, and maybe you see the adults playing a game at night, right?
Yeah.
And the pitch holds up to that, okay? But if you put every one of those players on for 45 minutes a half or 35 minutes a half for the GA, right? Inside, running around the pitch, all chasing the one ball, you'll have 100 people trampling the grass. It will not stand up. So you condense the effort in time. Now, the other side of this is that if you realize that, and if you have your scientists telling you that this is an inherent danger, well, the first thing I'd like to know is that, am I mistaken? Shouldn't we be asking our scientific community, our Marine Institute, this is a possibility. What will be the detrimental effects, if any, of this happening in our waters? Because we'll go back to the 90s, and you can ask your father that, right? When there was massive effort outside in the water here. And as I said, look, 280 boats down to 164. So we took the pain. Are we going to be expected to take the pain again in our own waters? Will we have to lose half our vessels to allow other people to come in and fish in our waters? I don't agree with that, because we have no rights in the channel off the French coast. We've no rights up off Denmark. We've no rights up off Holland. We don't have the historic record. No, because you see, this was all set.
We never fished there.
Yeah, that's not to say no that we couldn't fish there now. Like, look, the reason why we never fished there is very, very simple. Those countries left their waters because they ran out of fish.
Yeah.
Right? So they came to our waters to take the fish that were here, right? And that's continued. But now things have changed. We cannot use the same method that we use to share out the resources if Brexit happens and a no deal happens, as we see happening here now, because it will destroy not just the fishing grounds for us and our fishing fleet and our coastal communities, but eventually it'll destroy the goose that laid the golden egg. So that's what we're calling for. And I was speaking to one of our local politicians now, and I shouldn't be mentioning any of them separately, but I have to, because these are the people that are ringing us up. But whoever comes to me, I showed a picture there of Christopher Sullivan knocking on my door and coming up talking to me. Michael Collins comes to our AGM every year without fail, and he's a guy that I can pick up the phone and he gets it. He understands it because he comes from the same community as us. He can see the sea from his front door. Do you know what I mean? He knows what the lads are going through. He's meeting them and he's talking to them. And he's a good representative for this part of the country. He understands it. So I was talking to him tonight, and he said, Patrick, write it down for me. Put it down, and we put this to the minister the next day, because I didn't get a satisfactory answer to that question today. And it frightened me, to be honest with you. And I will be called cranky definitely after this by the other fellas that were at the meeting. But here's my fear. I'd rather have a fear of somebody saying you shouldn't have said that, rather than somebody saying later on you should have said that.
Yes.
So my job is to stand up for the fishermen and without fear or favour, and be fair to everybody. And I was expecting people to be questioning me here about certain fishing effects inside the bay and what was going on there.
We're hanging on. Don't worry, it's coming.
So I'm waiting for those questions, because as I said, look, I fished as a young man inside the bays. I earned my living. I fought for the young and for fishermen inside the bays. My track record stands for itself. It's there for anybody to see if they want to look. So I'm not afraid.
Let's say there is a no deal, right? And for the common person that's listening now who has no fishing background or anything, there's no deal. England falls out of the EU. What happens? If this, they can basically, we'll just for argument's sake, and we'll make it very loosely now for people that are listening. We'll say the Irish Sea, the Channel, and all up along that, we're basically kicked out of them. Everywhere, all the boats in Europe are gone from them waters, in theory. And they can come fish wherever they like, or they just have to fish within them waters.
But you see, Terence, you're seeing one small window, right? One small pane of glass in many panes of glass, right? Yes. Because if we have a no-deal Brexit, everything goes up in the air. It's not just fishing. We will be the first ones hit. We will be the hardest hit. But you will see French fishermen, as happened, as I said, referred to at the start of the conversation with the cod wars. They've already threatened this, and they carry out their word. There will be Armageddon in the ports in Europe. They will not let traffic flow freely. We have a scenario now that we're going through a land bridge, and this is for everybody because we get all our stuff from the continent, and we transport a lot of our agricultural stocks and foods out of the country, right? We need health certs. So we're going to get into the technical difficulty. So I'm going to make it very simple. If there's a delay, okay, and we're sending a lorry out that's delayed 6 hours, first of all, that means you need another lorry.
Mm-hmm.
So we're 1,000 lorries were taking the goods from our country and bringing them in. If there's a delay either way, you will need a second set of lorries because lorry drivers are only allowed a certain amount of hours to be on the roads, right? They have to take breaks. They have to be on the road. So that's going to delay it in as well. If they can't get to their destination in the timely fashion that they've laid out for their journey, then it could lead them into another day. And then you have chaos. And so we were talking, we discussed this now with our government departments and everything else, getting ready for Brexit, get the paperwork ready and everything else. And we're still asking questions that haven't been answered, right? So this is bigger than anybody believes. Here's what I think. We are part of the European Union, right? We decided not to join the UK or not even discuss joining the UK to leave because we felt that we were getting a better deal from Europe, okay? But we, as a country, are an outermost region with Brexit. We are cut off by land, sea, and air, right? We have to go over English airspace. We don't have a land bridge. That's gone now from the UK, as people might think, Jesus, you know, it's an extra day or two to get to the continent on water unless we're going to get faster ships. And even at that, we still have to go through UK waters.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So all these effects people don't even realize. And I don't want to be scaring people because I know fishing is the one, as they said, 95% have been dealt with, right? And we're part of the 5% that haven't been agreed upon, right? And I don't think that there will be a no-deal Brexit. I think it would be madness for everybody. But we have to prepare for that, and we have to take it reality. And I'm
this year.
Yeah, and I'm not telling people to go into the shops now and start stocking up like we see with toilet paper and everything else, right? You know, but seriously, like it's no joke. And look, 70% of our agricultural products doesn't go to the UK. Don't go to the European continent. Like it goes to the UK. So they are our nearest neighbours. We have history with them. History that ain't nice, right? But you know, we live in fear of it, but at the same time, but we know it'll never happen again, and we have a separate two jurisdictions in our country and all that to add up. So just to give you some of the complications, your food needs a health cert to travel now, right? Because they're outside, so to protect the EU borders. So I described it like this: imagine a pizza with 4 or 5 different meat toppings. Imagine if you had to get a veterinary cert for each one of them before you could allow it to travel across the borders. If you send a lorry across the UK, for it to stop it and open and break the seal on the back of it going to Europe is huge regulations and inspections and everything else. So like a no-deal Brexit is just madness. And we seem to be sleepwalking into this, like COVID has distracted us from it. And, you know, people, I don't think people grasp. Like, I don't know. Remember, there was a problem with driving licenses and everything else, and people's citizenship and all this stuff. We won't know until 6 months in to next year to know, God, what's happening. It's just batten down the hatch to keep going again.
What would you like as a man that's stuck in the fishing? What would you like to happen? What would you like to see happen? Everything sort of stays the same. There's a deal, something similar to what we have, or like we just boycott completely England and we go for our own type of thing?
I don't think we could do that, Terence. I think that would be the end of us, to be honest with you. I think they're our closest neighbour and our biggest ally in Europe as well, too, to be honest with you, when we were negotiating for anything over there. So, like, you know, it's crazy for this. And look, we have huge ties to the UK, regardless of people wanting to admit it. I worked in the UK. Like, I had family over in the UK. Like, you know, who doesn't? Do you know what I mean? Like, you have some sort of a cousin over there. Like, they're there. Like, so to turn around now and go back to a Cold War situation is just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. What I'd like to see happen, I'd like to see cool heads prevail. I would like to see the EU doing proper negotiations with the UK and the UK returning reciprocal negotiations with us, because we're all on the same planet. Like, so, it isn't as if you can jump off the planet and go to the next one and you get fed up with this one. Like, you know what I mean?
So like we had water on the moon there recently. You know? We could get a couple of trawlers up there. Yeah,
bring up a couple of fish. Yeah, but like, no, all seriousness. No, like, that's what I'd like to see. You ask me what I like to see. I'd like to see cool heads. I'd like to see people and people putting it aside, because it's not the politicians that are going to be affected by this. I can guarantee you that. It's going to be the man on the street. It's going to be the person that has to get up 9 to 5 to jobs, or some of us maybe 9 to 9 or 9 to 12, regardless. You know what I mean? But look, that's who it's going to affect. It's going to affect their children. It's something the UK felt they had to do. They have the rights to do that, and if you deny those rights, then I think that's way worse. So they took the vote, regardless of the turmoil that followed it, and one side saying others. We're seeing that in the American elections at the moment. Like, and look, isn't it great to have the freedoms to disagree, to agree to disagree? Do you know what I mean?
I think I might make a statement now, and I might actually hang myself. But to be fair, I'm going to kind of miss Donald Trump, because at least then we had another political sector that was in an absolute heap, and it gave me a small bit of faith that even if America could be in such political turmoil, at least Ireland was the same. You know what I mean? Like, at least if they were up Schitt's Creek, we weren't too far behind. Moral compass of a comfort that if America is fucked up, Ireland isn't too bad. You know what I mean?
Well, I had a cousin of mine now contacting me, like, and he says, "Here we go, we're back to the old swamp." And he says, "Politicians promising one thing and no intention of doing it." At least with Trump, as mad as he was, he carried through. He was a believer in his own ideas, and he followed through on it. Whereas we're back to the other thing now. You'd have to nearly, if he said a politician told you it was bright outside, you'd nearly open the curtains to have a look for yourself. You know. It's madness, isn't it?
We're going to have to get some of the questions that we had coming in, right? Now, in Bantry, we have a lovely bay. We have a lovely coastline. And especially with COVID, I think everybody has come about appreciating what we have. And I think that's been a wonderful thing about COVID, that we've all kind of appreciated what way life is and how life has become and stuff like that. And we've gotten either closer to our family members, be it through the internet and technology, or while still being further away from them. But I know even just in my life, I'm 26, maybe 27 years now, and it's been beautiful. It's the first time, and I can safely say this without failure, it's been the absolute best summer for myself to actually appreciate how beautiful Bantry Bay is and surrounding West Cork, because there's nothing better than Ireland when it's sunny. If we could put a roof on it and just a big halogen light, just to keep this place warm, we'd be the best country in the world. You know what I mean? And I've always said that if you can make it into a little greenhouse, Ireland will be the best country in the world. Right now, during the summer, and of course, everybody was out fishing, and we had loads of sprat in the bay, and we had loads of mackerel. And typical Bantry, everybody was out fishing and having a look. Now, we had a bit of fishing happening. Right now, we had plenty of slack online about the two boats. We won't bother mentioning because everybody can see them. If you don't, you can see all the fishing that's been going on. Now, I've even seen stories that these boats were the reason for Fungi's disappearance. You know, I'm surprised these boats aren't getting blamed for JFK assassination. Now, to be fair to them, they were probably, or if I don't know, I'm no judge or jury, but they're allowed to fish inside this area, aren't they? They weren't breaking the law by fishing inside the area.
Well, these boats have been fishing inside the area since they were built. Like, I don't understand why suddenly it becomes a problem. Like, you probably look back, you see fellas with pictures of those boats every year. This is nothing new. Like, this is their way they earn their income. That's why the judge ruled in their favour, like, because of the substantial amount of money they were making from these bays. So, like, if these people are destroying the stocks, they're doing a piss poor job with, like, if they have to keep coming back to catch more and more fish. And, like, as I said to you from the start, Terence, right, we work with the Marine Institute, okay? And the Marine Institute go through modelling, and they put in all different types of figures and estimates into their modelling, right, into their models that they have to try and predict the future. It's done over a 5-year basis. So the first 3 years are the anchor, and they look at that. That's your historic record. And the next 2 set the trend. So if you see a change in the trend going up or down, and now how complicated this is, they go on year classes, right? So it's called a recruitment. So if you've had a bad recruitment, if you don't have many kids, you can see in 4 or 5 years' time, the stock won't be there in this abundance. So you'll drop your quotas for that, even though you think, geez, the place is full of fish. But in a couple of years' time, the recruitment for that couple of year classes won't come in, or they miss them. And there's nobody's infallible. So here's the thing. So there is advice on this stock, right? And they give advice of how much of this fish can be caught. And that's what they do. And then you hear this, oh, these guys are out fishing the bay. Look what they did to the herrings, right? So we'll touch on the Celtic Sea herrings and I'll come back to the spread. Yeah. So in my time inside in the Irish South and West, right, watching these and working with the advisory council and the committees that look at all the aspects of this throughout the years, the boats that catch the fish, how much they catch the fish, times of the year they catch the fish, where the fish are, the size of the fish. They have always fished below the level that they were told was a safe level to fish. And yet the stock still collapsed. So if you're blaming fishermen for doing too much fishing, and they don't do that fishing, according to the scientific advice, you have to wonder, there's something else going on here, lads. So you can either choose to ignore that and keep blaming the fishermen, or you try and investigate and you say, well, what's happening? And you know what, Terence? We can see it this year. And if you go down into the village, you'll see the signposts up, how there was a thriving community and the amount of jobs that were created in Bantry in the 1850s, right? By barreling anchovies, right? Guess what? They're back. They're back in the bays now in abundance, as thick as grass around the bays, and the boats will be, next thing they'll be complained, oh, you're catching anchovies, right? So this is the change. So the world is changing, climate change is changing, our oceans are changing, the temperature of our waters are changing. And if people don't understand that that's having a knock-on effect, good or bad, then they're not in the real world. And that's the truth, like. So as I said, I'm involved in aquaculture and we grow mussels on mussel lines. We don't feed them. We don't mistreat them. We just left them there. We let nature take its course, right? We use a reusable system of rope that you put out year after year. We put a cotton mesh over them that dissolves and melts away into the water. It's most environmentally friendly, carbon soaking activity. And now the reason why I'm telling you that is that we use that as a barometer, right? To know what's happening in the environment that changes, because you'll see different growth rates, you'll see the spawning at a different time of the year, you'll see different seaweeds in the mussel lines. It's a natural reef system. Yeah. So it gives us an indication of the health of the waters around the place. And we've Class A waters inside the bay. You see it in Bantry, like it replaced the oil businesses. That's what it was set up. My father was on the Dunnamark. So we brought this in. So fishing is like that, right? And when I started fishing, right, in creel pots and stuff like that, we were using 300 and 400 pots. Now, if you talk to fishermen, they're using 500, 600, 1,000, 1,200, 1,400, 1,500. The numbers are incalculable. These pots are 70 or 80 euros a piece. It's a huge expense to be going at this, catching the fish outside there, you know? So, like, everybody has to try and make a living out of the sea. Nobody wants to destroy it. And that's what these boats are doing. No different to anybody else going down there. And I just want to put this in context to anybody that's listening here, that, oh, they're fishing out all the fish and they're catching everything inside in the bay. That is nonsense. That is absolutely ridiculous to say that. And I'll explain why. They have a net behind these two boats, regardless of the size of them. They are 100 meters apart, right? The bay is 4 kilometers wide. You can look it up yourselves. It's 10 kilometers at its outer mouth. They are only towing a fraction of the bay. They find where the fish are and they take a small sliver of the fish out, and the fish divide and go anywhere else. Now, here's the scientific evidence of what I'm saying, is that this is no harm, right? And some people will say, they're using this braider and that braider. They are being boarded by the SFPA more than any other boat. When they come into land, they are inspected. The Marine Institute come down and take samples of the fish out of the boat and take it away for analysis and everything else. So they're fully monitored. There is a record of what's going through the factories. There's been all rumours and innuendos and street rumours. If that was the case, it would be shut down. The SFPA would be in there. This government wanted to stop this practice. These lads had to go into a courtroom to stop them. So if you think that they were doing something wrong, that somebody wouldn't come along and go, we've been proven right here, out you go. So, like, look at the evidence. look at what's actually happening. So remember what I said about 100 meters apart? That's all they are. So even though you see the boat steaming around inside the bay, they're not fishing. You'll see them when they find a mark of fish, they'll tow up through that mark of fish and they'll take it, put it into the boats and go. Look at the ICE's advice. There is, I think, 70 to 80,000 tons of this fish. And the ICE's advice and most stocks believe that 0.2, around 20%, is what is rejuvenated every year in most stocks. Might be a little less. Some mackerel now is up to 26%, right? For the year class that's in it now at the moment. So you could take 26% out of the stock and the ones that are left will rejuvenate itself and rebreed next year and go. Because you see, people don't understand, right? They're not like animals and humans. A fish spawns thousands and thousands of times for itself, right? So one fish could have 1,000 offspring. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, what somebody said to me, well, is there anything, why do you fish the sprat inside the bay? Well, number of reasons. They die at the age of 3. They just croak themselves and gone. So it's a waste if you don't go in and catch them. So we've put forward proposals if people have concerns. And as I said, we sit down with anybody. If they say, listen, your fish that you're catching are too small, we'll increase the size of the mesh, right? If they're saying that, well, you're fishing too long inside the bays, you're in there too long, we will negotiate and reduce the number of days that a fishing boat is inside there. We suggested 20% that we'd be allowed in the bay in the year, or throughout the year. That's 80% of the bay that there's no activity inside in the bay. 80%, right? And this doesn't just affect the sprat boats inside, right? So this was a ban on boats for all boats over 18 meters, regardless of what type of fishing they were. So to put a boat out like we were talking about, with boats out into the wild Atlantic, away from their traditional fishing grounds, who've never fished for sprat in their lives. As a consequence, that's this crazy talk about these boats down the bay, hoovering up all the fish and that. Like, so if these boats are hoovering up all the fish, do you see any skinny fish, that's feeding on these? Why are they coming into the waters where we are? Fish follow fish, fish eat fish, and I absolutely agree with that. As I said, my father has an angling boat and a tourist boat, and he brings people out. We want to see all biodiversity protected. I spoke out, and when I heard I spoke on radio shows about culling seals and everything else. This has to be done properly. Like, if there's a problem there, like anything else, if there's a wild animal or if there's something impacting on something else, we see it on the land with deer. No. See the Bambi movie, bring it to tears. Yet they're allowed to be culled and killed, and same with foxes, same with badgers, same with a dog, right? A pedigree dog that goes in and attacks a farmer's sheep, he's gone, right? Mm-hmm. A dog that'll bite somebody or his behavior turns bad will be put down. So I don't understand why fishermen have to be targeted for looking for the same rights as any other citizen in the state. And again, I come back to this, Terence. These people, right, the people I know and the people you know and the people around your fishermen that you know are going to see on top of liquid. They're risking their lives to go out there. Anything could happen. And they put that fear aside to go out and make a living for themselves, their families, and the coastal communities. And these people spend their money locally. They really genuinely do. They are a really important part of our coastal communities. And people come down to see them as well too. They're an asset to our communities. And they do so risking their lives. And they need a break, because you look at the history of what fishermen have done. They've reduced their numbers. They've changed their nets. They've modified their boats. They've brought in more regulations in a fishing boat than you'd see inside a nuclear factory.
Yeah, we said that before.
What more do people want of these people? Like, you have to simply, we're putting up monuments and everything to the people that are lost at sea. I as I said, I've lost friends to the sea. I know the tragedy that's in that. I don't want to be going to individual people, but a recent tragedy, that young fellow worked with us. We're not stones. And for if you want to talk to us, if you have valid reasons and proof and evidence to back up what you're saying, instead of this nonsense, and I'll use that easy word, it's a nonsense. Come and talk to us. We'll show you the evidence. We'll show you the reports. And if there's something wrong there, we'll be the first ones to acknowledge it and do something about it. Because we want to protect our seas. We want to protect our environment. We want to protect, Like 99% of our boats are bringing in plastics from the sea. Like, where we get this reputation from, I can't fathom it.
Yeah, like I said off air before you, I said, look, as fisherman's son, I always feel like I have to sort of defend what fishermen do, and like it must be one like I don't even think drug dealers go to the certain level that they do. Like, you know what I mean? And let's be honest here, because like I can't see. I was raised in fish, like it gave me all the brains I have, or the lack of it, whichever you want. But every single time there's a conversation comes up with fishermen, it's like overfishing, overfishing, overfishing. It's like that one. Do you know what it is? It's like someone saying the world is flat.
Yeah. It's absolutely.
The evidence is still there, saying that the world is a bit round, and then there's some other people that say the world is flat. Now, I personally, and I'm going to say this here now, regardless of who was fishing inside the bay or how they were fishing or whether it was sustainable or anything like that, I personally didn't like the sight of it. Right, for a cosmetic thing, maybe that was my sort of hump on it. Now, I wouldn't be so far gone if you had to turn around and said, right, because there was loads of talk on Facebook, and like, you get the keyboard warriors and the gurus that know everything and know nothing at the same time, but they do a bit of Wikipedia searching and they go, oh, well, this is it. You can't fish within 6 miles. How are they fishing off Glengariff? And Glengariff isn't 6 miles away from Bantry and blah, 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 blah. This is all wrong. This is all wrong, right? Now, regardless of whether they were doing it right, as a cosmetic thing, I just didn't like the sight of it, right? Now, being Irish boats sort of made it a little bit easier for me now. If I had seen Spanish or French or anything else, no, I'd say I'd get out my dinghy and say, come on, boys, now clear off. But being Irish boat sort of didn't add salt to the wound, I'll put it that way to you. And I just, John, I didn't like the sight of Bantry being fished. Now, personally, I did. Because I hadn't seen it. Now, maybe, like I said, it's the first time in 26 years I've been in Bantry that I've actually appreciated Bantry Bay. So, like, I could turn around and say safely, this was the first time in 26 years I saw trawling happening, or whatever, I think it was trawling anyway, happening in Bantry Bay. Now, it could have been happening every single year. I just never paid attention to it. And I think it probably was going on every single year. And the whole world didn't, or we'll just say the whole world, say Bantry in general, didn't get to see it because we were all too busy in our own little rat race. We're all inside the wheel going round and round and round and round and round. Now everybody's out walking, or they're out in the bay, and they're kind of appreciating the abundance that we do have in this bay. And they go, hang on a second. Here's someone here trying to take all this away from us. We want to go fishing. We want to go angling. We want to go this. And these guys are coming in. Now, if they were well within their rights to do it, bless, good luck. But it didn't sit with me well to see it. Now, again, like I said, it could have happened last year and I didn't see it.
It did happen last year, Terence, and it happened the year before, because they've track records of it. Like, do you see, the difference is that it was brought to your attention and somebody told you this is bad. Whereas up until somebody told you in program, you said, oh, this is terrible, and look what they're doing. And you got the misinformation. And as you said, the keyboard warriors came out fighting for this. So if they were correct, and this man has, these boats have a track record in this, and they have proof and evidence of doing this. He's at it 30 years, one of these lads, like, so if he's done the damage that he's done, right? Well, why hasn't everything collapsed? What's happening? Now, I'm going to give you an example of the way I see this, right? Okay, because I lived inside of Skibbereen town, right? And I had to go feeding calves, right, on the outskirts of town, and fill up 2 milk cartons with hot water, mix bloom and go over. I spent my times where I'm living now above in Derrycroom with my grandfather, cutting turf above in the bog, bringing in reeks of hay, right? So I've experienced across the board of what it's like to use these. Look at the cut of them, right? So and you learn from all this stuff, right? So one of the things was, up behind me, the forestry is planted. And he told me, he says, Jez, we owned that at one stage. And I said, oh, fickard, why did you keep that for me? And he said, right, there's €3 an acre, or £3 an acre, they sold it, right? And I said, well, why'd you get rid of it? It was like the old scrubland across over there, and there was 10 or 12 was sharing the top of the hill. And I said, oh, right, yeah, what was that called? Commonage, he said, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm going to use that as the analogy now of what we see it, and what I see what's happening here, right? Okay. So you have the claims, small fishermen being put out of business, fellas can't compete with the bigger boats and give it to us, whatever. Right. So I'm going to use the commonage, right? So there are lads up on top of any hill that you want to pick in West Cork commonage, and they're all up there driving down the sheep. Only one of the lads above there, right, over the last 30 or 40 years, has accrued more rights than everybody else, right? Because his family members or the next door neighbour, as they passed, they gave him their rights to the commonage. So say he had 4 shares, right? And the other 4 that were up in the hill with him had a share each. Would you think it would be fair for our government to come in and say, listen, the header, the gorse up on top of the hill now, lads, it's being destroyed. You've too many sheep up here. So you know what we're going to do? Johnny, you've got 4 times the rest of the lads' sheep. So you come down out of that now. You've got a good bit of land down below there, right? You can go down there and get off the hill, right? And he's down at the bottom of the hill. And as soon as he gets down to the bottom, he's told, listen, lads, you're all right now, right? We can throw a few more sheep to your way now to give you a bit more, right? And put them back up on top of the hill. There is no extra sustainability in that scenario. So that's the exact same thing with the fishing, right? What the minister said was, you're too big, get out. We're going to give what you have to the smaller fella, and happy days. Now, what happens next week or next year when the minister turns around to the small fella and he says, well, there's a smaller fella there now than you're next. Or the next guy. And somebody comes in and says, listen, you're doing harm to the environment, as the reports say, and there's no more creel fishing. As happened in Roaring Water Bay when I was there, when they brought in an SAC and they turned around to us and they even said, listen, get the mussel lines out of there. So you see, I know from experience what happens here. So you look at the scientific evidence of what's going on here, and if this is doing no harm and people are earning a living, and there's 14 men on those 2 boats, like that's 14 families, local families that are supplied, like that's 14 small boats. So like to say to those 14 men, you're not entitled to a living here. You're not doing any damage, by the way. We've no evidence of that. And if you think I'm saying this flippantly, look at the judgment. And the 2 people that wrote the reports for the minister said the decision he made and the conclusions he made weren't based on their reports. Because when they were challenged by another scientific evidence from another person, another scientist, they admitted that the scope that they were given to do their evaluation and do their reports didn't cover what needed to be covered in the judgment. So when people keep misquoting parts of that thing, there's 192 pages there, lads. Read it all. Do you know what I mean?
3 or 4 sentences you need.
Oh no, it's not. Like,
but
if you read the judgment, if you read the judgment, let me tell you this now. If you read the judgment and you see where the government made claims, the judge comes back in, and not only does he quote that part, he goes back 3 or 4 lines and 3 or 4 more lines, and the context changes completely. So they misquote. Yeah, and it's all in the judgment. So you see, I've read this inside and out because this is really, really important. Because as I said, it has nothing to do, in my view, per se, about just telling these guys off. It's every single boat that goes outside. And anybody that wants to stand over this, don't dare show your face if we see a lad getting lost outside in the sea in front of me. I'm telling you, because then Cranky will turn into lunatic. And I've lost friends to the sea turrets. And I mean this now, this is serious, like pushing people out, risking their lives outside, and no real evidence backing why this is happening whatsoever. There was nothing to decide on a trawler. Why was a trawler being excluded over 18 meters? Why is he being kicked out? When you can have super boats. A lad posted a picture there up on Facebook, right? It was an old Dutch boat. She was 10 feet or 20 feet longer than the new boat. But the new boat was 12 meters wide, 17.9 meters long. And she was maybe 4 stories high. And like this, so going by length. So which boat is going to do the more damage inside if it is down to that? It's nonsense. And we said it was flawed. The judge agreed with us that it was flawed. And that's the way it is. So to put lives in danger for no apparent reason, when we see new fisheries coming into the bays now, that wouldn't have been able to be prosecuted, the anchovies. There's no boats in there. Like, I don't know too many small sprat boats. I fish for sprat myself in Roaring Water Bay in a half-decker, 36 foot long. We had to catch the fish when they were feeding. When they were not feeding, so that they could be processed. So I've participated in a fishery like this. And no big boat came in and pushed me out the way or said I couldn't make a living. There was plenty of fish there. That's the way fishing is.
Yeah.
You know, it's a shared resource.
What is the actual law, the radius that you can't fish within the area? What is that? Because like it got thrown around a lot around this town. during that sort of segment of seeing the lads inside the bay and stuff like that. And like, look, like I said, I've no ill fate against any of the boys inside the boat. I said cosmetically and just the way it looked to me, it didn't settle very well. But look, if they're doing everything, God bless, that's salute. Do you know what I mean? Fishermen, you got to do your thing. Like, that was the only problem I had with it. But you've got the likes of the actual law, because it was thrown around. You've got the 6 mile. It is a 6 mile, isn't it?
Yeah, 6 mile exclusion zone, but that was the one that was overturned. So look, when the minister, Minister Michael, it meant that say, right, your dad fished from Bantry, right? I don't know what side of the boat that he was fishing in at the time, but if he was in a boat over 18 meters, if he was in a boat 60 foot, before he could actually throw out the net, he'd have to steam outside of Bantry Harbour. He'd have to steam out beyond the fastnet, 6 miles out into sea, and then he could shoot his nets. Now, I think it's 50 nautical miles, I think, from the pier to the fishing ground for that boat. So that means he'd be going out there for a day. So if he was a day tripper, he'd go out, one shot, back in again. Like this was the craziness that was in play. Can you imagine? Like as you said, no, your dad wouldn't go out in December. Well, like if he had to go out 6 miles off the shoreline, how many days and how many months would he rule out? This is the reality. So getting it mixed up with just, there's 2 boats down the bay now, this has to be stopped. It was bigger than the sum of its parts. And that's why I was so adamant that I was delighted and I welcomed the judgment, because we were proven right. This was a flawed legislation. They didn't put enough thought into it. And as I said, we can't move left or right without scientific evidence to back us up 100%. And even at that, we're looking for more scientific evidence, because the fish are out there. We're being accused of fishing out the seas. It's just not true. Now, are there some stocks, Terence, in danger? Absolutely. Is it down from fishing effort? Not at all. That's not what's happening, right? Okay, so there was a video posted by the lads in Baltimore, okay, of out whale watching, and they complained that the whales and the dolphins couldn't get at the sprat, right? So they had brought them up into a ball. That's, you see the marine nature programs, and then they keep dipping into the ball until they eat all the sprat, right? Yeah. But they couldn't get at them, and the reason why they couldn't get at them was there was another better predator there than them and faster, and it was bluefin tuna. So there was a shoal of them there eating the fish. So they devoured the fish and they took it away from the other fellas, right? And that's nature. But like, if you allow one predator to dominate the marine environment, then that's going to have a way bigger effect, not on the massive stocks, but on the ones that are struggling. So fishing won't matter. So cod now, for instance, would be one of those, because remarkably so, now fish eat fish, and all fish eat spawn, right? So if you have an area where these sprat fisheries are going in and they're eating spawn, they're eating all small things and particles inside the water, they're eating eggs. So these come in, they eat larvae. So I'm going to give you an example now of how this is affected. So wind farms, right, is becoming the new topic thing, and MPAs. Well, in Newlyn in England, okay, they put in the wind farms into the sand outside there and embedded them in there. And because of the noise and the frequency that was coming off the wind farms, they scared away the fish. Simple as that. So the knock-on effect was the lobster and the crab numbers bloomed, just took off, because the fish weren't coming in eating their eggs. Simple. Right, yeah. See? So if you have... So somebody's saying, like, leave in the sprat, the other big fish will eat them. Great. The big fish will eat them, they'll spawn, the small fish will go in and eat their spawn.
Yes.
So this is nature.
We still haven't got it. We still haven't got a quota for the bluefins, have we?
We were. That's a sore subject. I'll remind you the figures, right? 19,000 tons is the European quota for this fish. I'll say it again. 19,000 tons. We get to share 74 with 5 other countries, and we were told it wasn't worth the political capital to ask for more.
Why?
Ask. We won't ask. Hey, buddy, I went to Dubrovnik to ask that question, and we got a fishery out of it from my trip out there. Now, was it me that got it? I don't know. Bit of a coincidence. First person to go out to an ICAT meeting and came home, and a year later, we had an angling and tagging system brought in that we couldn't have for the 3 years previous.
Yeah.
Do I claim credit for that? No, I don't. Genuinely, you can make up your own minds, right? But it happened. Now, we will have all the data and the fish. This is what I was told now, Terence. Listen to this. This is why it's all gone. Look, this is what I was told. We'll prove that there's more fish than ever coming up into this part of the Atlantic, right? And then that evidence will be taken to ICAT, and Europe will get a bigger quota, and we won't get another fish.
Jesus fuck! And the rest of Europe still have. We'll say the French and the Spanish. They have their quote for bluefin tuna.
Yeah. But the French, But when the French looked for this quota, what they did is they used the scientific argument, right? And they went in and they said, "Listen, the fish are here, whatever. Yeah, we need a share," and they got it because they asked. If you don't ask, you don't get.
We're not trying to dominate, or we're not trying to fucking solve the Da Vinci Code here. All you got to do is ask.
No, ask.
You ask, like.
Yeah.
And this would help, because I would imagine if we got some of that 19,000 tons of stock, we would be able to we could let the monk stock go up, we could let the hake stock go up. The boys will be fishing for something else. Let that stock come up and down, like you said. This predator is coming in. It's like what they did. I was reading a book. I know it's very frightening, but I decided I'd take up a little bit of reading during COVID. But the first time explorers, when they went to a different land, they brought in goats and pigs, and they just let them breed and breed and breed. So when they came back to that land again, they'd have food. They'd have meat to eat, right?
Yeah.
But they brought in, and it's a problem down in Texas in America, is the wild boar. And the wild boar, it's a plague. Like they're just being like all the farming, everything is done, and they just be killed off because they're the top predator, and everything else is gone. Like everything else along the way. So if this bluefin tuna comes in and we don't kill it off, or we don't manage it, I guess is the word that we are, fish for it, they're just going to take over. They're going to kill everything. They're going to kill the monk stock. They're going to kill all, because they are a proper predator. Like The monk is sort of a fairly docile, ugly looking fucking thing, to be fair to the most god-awful thing I've ever seen in my life. But these are predators. These are fast. Like if anyone has ever watched any of the documentaries and see how the tuna swim, they swim fast. They are basically one stake down from a great white shark in a miniature version of it. They are top predator in their area, and they will just dominate. And that's the problem. Yeah. This will cause more wreck to our
Isn't it funny that the herring stocks? Isn't it funny now that the herring stocks have taken such a nosedive with the amount of these fish coming in into the smalls and everywhere? Now, like 2 and 2 is 4 in my book. You know, what did they say about Sherlock Holmes? Eliminate all the possibles, and eventually, how no matter how obscure the last one is, it must be. You know, so like this is the way it is. This is the way for us. But look, we could be talking about this all night, Terence, and I think we would get no further on it. It's shocking to me, and as I said, I could be getting abuse for this tomorrow. I'll probably get abuse from from somebody anyway, from somewhere. But you know, as I said, we'll keep banging away at the drum anyway. We'll see where it goes. Well, like I'll tell you now, right? And I know, and this is water, folks. So we have meetings with our minister and his department, and look, we try and get the best deal that we possibly can, and they ask us where our priorities are for our fishing fleet and everything else. Like an example for that last year was in single stock species advice. They gave ICES said, listen, the haddock are good lads, we can go 100% up on the quota we caught last year, but because you have a bycatch that you can catch cod when you're catching haddock, we can't give you the 100%. So they gave us a 30% increase instead, right? Okay. Now, that means there's a massive amount of haddock outside there, and boats are actually trying to avoid them, because if they catch them under the landing obligation, they're tied to the pier wall. They can't go out. It's a crucifixion, right? But anyway, they get over that. So at the same meeting, right, because we were prepared, because my captain, my chairman at the moment, like he's a really good guy, really good guy, one of the good ones now, right? Yeah. And thanks be God he's not listening, he'd be blushing. But would you believe it? BIM asked him, because he was such a good fisherman, to trial fishing for swordfish, for bluefin tuna, sharks, whatever. What you call them? The big beaks out of them, swordfish, and there was another one. Was it? Yeah, there was a specific type of fishery anyway with long lining, right? And he became successful at it. And the Japanese came over and they were mad about it, and he was long-lining over the side of the boat, and he was getting massive money for these fish, huge money. So we actually have a history of target fishing these boats. We also have a catch history in the tuna boats that went down and catching albacore. So we have a history of catching these fish. But because the European Union decided that there was too much of a bycatch going on within the fishery in the gill netting, the gear that was used, right, the drift netting, that we have to stop it, right? So, what years did they pick for the reference years to give out the quotas for the bluefin
The
tuna?
ones where we weren't fishing.
Wasn't that a coincidence? And what did one of our people raise the voice and say, "Oh no, that's not fair"? Well, if they did, I have yet to read it anywhere. So you have fishermen then absolutely going nuts, and the fellas that are coming down the bay, to be honest with you, would have been the lads that pioneered that fishery. So this is where we need to discuss if those lads could find an alternative income elsewhere, right? Genuinely, and could fish elsewhere. That's what they do, right? Genuinely. Now, if that's what we were saying to the minister, like he said it in the thing, there's other opportunities. Identify them. So the minister said, we'll break this down. We'll give them a 2,000 next year and 1,000 the year after, and we'll allow them to go out and catch the fish elsewhere. Well, I go through these charts, and I couldn't see where they're going to make their extra money, unless we're going to look at proportionality across the fleet. It's a different conversation, right? If the minister wants, so go out and find them something else to fish. The anchovy are in this year. These fish, there's nobody geared up to catch these fish, only these boats. People complain that you'll hear, I'll raise another topic, even though you might have these questions. So a lot of people say, oh, it's terrible. These fish are going into human consumption. They're going into fish meal. Isn't that terrible?
Yes.
So the terrible part about that is fish meal is not going into the land as fertilizer, like people say. This fish meal is going into feed other fish. So the next time you're sitting down, whoever's giving out about this, and tucking into a nice bit of salmon, that salmon is there because they were fed with organically caught and fish meal products going in to feed that salmon, and you're eating it. So it's not wasted, they fine-tune this to make sure that the least amount that goes into it. And that's the same as feeding an animal, cutting grass off the field or whatever else, if somebody says, oh, it's your grass, there's no harm. Well, you could always put carrots or spuds or something into the field instead of the grass. This is business, lads. This is what we do to feed you. This is what these lads do to bring in food. And it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And they should be rewarded for it and given the kudos that they want. And the next time you see these boats around the place, give them a wave. Not the two fingers, right? Give them a wave because they deserve it. Honest to God, they deserve it. These are lads that they're spending nights away from their families at home. It isn't a tough job. I did it myself. I'm telling you, it ain't nice. It really isn't. But it's in them.
I wouldn't. Like, I saw my father, and I grew up with it, and I never went out with one trip. Didn't do a single trip with it. And to be fair to him, he never wanted me to do it. He never encouraged me to do it. He was just like, look, it's not a great life. You saw how, like, birthdays, like, thank God he was home for every Christmas, but there was birthdays, anniversaries, weddings. Like, you're a fisherman, you've no social life. You forget it. You're going to be gone for most of the summer. I remember one year in school, if we ever went on a holiday, we'd never go during the summer. It would always be the first 2 weeks of September, and it would always be the first 2 weeks of school that my dad would be free, that he would go fishing. Or it would be fishing, he'd be going on his holidays. And one of the teachers turned around to me and told me that they were going to report me to because they were taking me off the first 2 weeks of school, because my father had his priorities on his social and holiday life rather than me being in school. And I remember my dad just turned around and says, God, you can't teach fucking Egypts. And that was it. He said it was the one and only time. It was the one and only time to see this person and go to one of my parent-teacher meetings. And he looked at him, and he didn't even bring it up. He says, "Yeah, you just can't teach fucking Egypt." And that was it. That was his response after meeting this person that was going to take me to child services, because my father would take me on holidays for the first 2 weeks of September.
Because your father spent his year risking his life to go out so that you could go to school genuinely to support you, that you could go in and hold your head up inside with your classmates. Because I know what it's like, lads.
Yeah,
There's no such thing as you come into the pier and Christ, we caught nothing last year and someone is going to hand you an envelope of cash. You
That's it.
earned it.
Yeah.
And you earned every single penny, and you had to fight for it. And you gave long hours outside there, cold, wet, gales slashing off you, crawling into bunk at night, grabbing a few hours, jumping out of the boat. It's a hard, hard life, like, and to be knocking these lads then, for doing what they're trying to do and support their families. Like the lad that I'm in now, his proudest moment was one of the daughters of the lads that worked with him came in at 21 years of age, and she said, "Look, I had to come in to thank you." So she thanked him, and he's younger, he's a couple of months older than me, and so he was able to meet a 21-year-old girl, lads, that was able to have what she had because of her father fishing on the boat with that man, and what he gave and what he did for that crew. They were a family, and we can't lose sight of that. So, and that's in your own local communities. How anybody could find something wrong with a fisherman, in my eyes, is just unbelievable. Big, small, and indifferent. It's all the same. You fishermen in pots and everything. So if anybody thinks I'm down on them, I was one of them. It is the most difficult job you can do. You can imagine now they're sitting at home and the gales are howling, and a fisherman's inside, and a pot fisherman is going, "Jesus, will there be anything left tomorrow? Will I go out tomorrow? Will I be able to haul the gear?" And if the wind changes and he's up on a lee shore is when the wind is blowing you down on top of the rocks, and you're trying to haul off your gear and you're backing away full power with your boat, your hauler's going flat out and you're just throwing the pots in behind you, the water's breaking around you, the shoals thing, and anybody see him and says, "He's a lunatic, just not bother about it. He's just a lunatic. Look what he's doing. He's an absolute lunatic." Why? But that's the life.
Yeah,
that's the life. Like,
you can see scaffolders get up on top of scaffolding in a gale of wind, like. Do you know what I mean?
This is it. Like, yeah. So, I have the utmost respect for any fella that gets into a boat, big or small, that goes to sea to try and make a living. What I don't like is when we're turned against each other with misinformation and lies, and rallying up the country to be against us rather than for us. I think it's incredible for that. It makes no sense to me,
It doesn't. Right, we're going to wrap this up, but we've got the most important part of our podcast, right? This is our 30 seconds rapid fire question time, right? Where we ask 10 questions that are the most random questions you can find, and everybody's got to answer them, and you've got only 30 seconds to answer them, right? So we do it at the end of all podcasts, so we have a bit of fun after. After a serious topic like this, it's time to have a bit of fun, right? So in 4 seconds, Mr. Patrick Murphy, by the way, thank you very much for doing this once again. We are going to ask you phone call or text message?
Phone call.
Favorite movie?
Oh God, what's the favorite? The Irishman, the most recent one. Yeah, The Irishman.
That's a good movie. McDonald's or Burger King?
McDonald's.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
10.
The strangest place you've made a phone call or sent a text?
Say again?
The strangest place you've ever made a phone call or sent a text?
From the phone box.
From the phone box. A person you'd like to have dinner with, dead or alive?
Oh, Jesus. Dead or alive. Nelson Mandela, maybe something new. Yeah. Nelson
this
Mandela,
is the most topical question now. Next, ketchup in the fridge or outside the fridge?
In the fridge. In the fridge.
Live forever or have the power of invisibility?
Live forever.
Do you eat soup or drink it?
Eat.
And what is the one thing that annoys you the most in the world?
People giving out about fishermen.
Amen, brother. Amen. Mr. Murphy, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you once again for coming back to us.
Anytime, Terence. Anytime. Maybe if you want to get a catch up, maybe after December, or talk about, I'd appreciate it, because as a coastal community in West Cork, I had this in the Star as well too. Look, it's really important that we realise how important fishing is to us around this part of the coastline. It really is, lads. It's something. It's the lifeblood of our coastal towns and villages. It is. If you take it out of it, we're going to be in trouble. So it's worth minding, and we should be fighting for it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, of course. Right, guys, that is it. Thanks again for coming and tuning our way. It was another great one. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I hope you got the answers you wanted. If you didn't, you should have texted in and get your questions asked. But as always, Mr. Murphy was great, and he's a good guy, and we wish him all the best. And hopefully like everything, guys, we really need to support our local industries, our agriculture, our beef, our fishing, everything. We gotta really appreciate what we have, and hopefully COVID has done that to people to really appreciate our surrounding areas, our industries, such as, like I said, our beef and our fisheries. This is stuff that grows, guys. This is stuff that literally the Americans everywhere else in the world, they'd sell their left arm for what we have at our doorstep. So we really need to appreciate our fresh fish, our fresh beef, and we got to look after it, because if we don't, there's going to be someone else comes in and takes it away from us. And of course, us Irish people, we only ever complain when things are gone. So we need to stand up, realize what we have, and make the most of it, because, like I said, there'll be other countries that come in and they'll take it away from us. Like always, guys, thank you for tuning our way. We really appreciate it. Until next week, don't forget to tell somebody that you love them. From all of us here, good night. God bless, guys, and we will see you next week, please God.
Frozen in this moment, the last, and I know it. Think about the winners with hands with the coldest. Think about handouts, shit, you're still growing. Think about the world, how we didn't even notice.